Warmly welcome to this evening, which is held in order to commemorate the Memorial Day of the Holocaust and its victims. We, as a church, we have organized this evening for many years because we want to show our active support for the Jewish people and also to spread the knowledge about the Holocaust so that this should never happen again. My name is Sebastian Askelund, one of the pastors of this church, and I will be the host together with Victoria Stixon. A warm welcome to you this evening, all of you who are online. We would like to welcome to all of those who are from Anzaga School and all those invited, honored guests, or the representatives from different media. And we look forward to listening to Elisabeth Volpert and Simon Horst and Ruben Agnason, and we are going to present them a little later. We are also going to enjoy beautiful music performed by Christina Eberstein and Arvi Svensson.
Back in this room, or just ask any one of our hosts and they will help you out.
We shall start this evening by observing a minute's silence for the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust. So I would like to ask you all to stand up. We observe silence to honor those deceased. And please be seated. I have the privilege of introducing tonight's first speaker, and this is Elisabeth Volpert. She is a doctor and also researched in cancer treatment. She has also written books of the cut off and the saved, and which is the story of the flight of her father. She is going to share the story of the survival of her parents. And after, we shall also listen to the music from Schindler's List, written by John Williams, will be performed by Christina. And first, a warm welcome to Elisabeth. Thank you, because you have for invitation to tell you about the fate of my relatives during the Holocaust. My name is Elisabeth Volpert, and I work as a doctor. Today I'm here because I am the child of 2 survivors of the Holocaust, and also I have written a book about their stories. My father was born 1922 in Lodz, and this is a big city in Poland. He lived with his family of 6 people in one of the main streets, and he went to a boys' school with boys from Catholic and Jewish families. And when he was 17, the Nazi Germany invaded Poland, and when he was 18, the autumn of 1940, he was forced into the ghetto in Warsaw. And this photo is from 1935 of my father in Sweden, and I am the baby in his arms. My father went around in the ghetto in that year, 1940, and he observed how the Germans became more and more brutal, and how they had less and less food. And he thought that, and they marked me with a piece of cloth. They separated me from my friends, and they locked me in a ghetto where there's no food. But are they ever going to release me? So in the spring of 1941, he decided to try to flee from the ghetto. He knew nothing of the concentration camp, but he felt that he was not going to survive if he had stayed in the ghetto. So he went about this carefully and got a false identity card with a more Polish-sounding name. And there are many who did likewise. But when he told his parents, his relatives about his plan for his escape, his relatives tried to dissuade him. They thought that it was too dangerous and it was more safe to stay in the ghetto and do as the Germans said. But his mother supported his plan. And I wrote about this moment in my book because this was the moment that saved his life, and he left the ghetto. So early in the morning, 1941, he climbed over the wall of the ghetto with the help of his young niece, who helped him with a ladder. And then afterwards, he traveled to the countryside in a small city called Batski, where he knew that there was a job to be had because he had to work and because he had no money. And then he lived in that city for many years with this false identity. He worked in a factory, he got new friends and a girlfriend. And this photo is from my father's false identity card of 1942. You see the stamp on the right-hand side. This is from the German government. So in the ghetto, my father's family of 5 people remained, and also a large part of his relatives. So this photo is my grandfather and of my grandma, and I never met any of them. My grandfather worked, he was a deep believer Jewish in Judaism, and my father said that he lost everything and lost all the hope when the Germans burnt their garden. He was then murdered in 1941 in the ghetto of Warsaw. So this photo shows my grandma's false identity, 1943. So my grandma, she survived the Holocaust. He actually was permitted to leave the ghetto because she was a dentist, and there was a lack of dentists. So she was able to take with her a family of 3 people, so my father's sister and aunt and grandma. But unfortunately, this did not help those 3 persons. They enjoyed a quiet spring. They lived in a small city. There was food and a little more freedom than the Warsaw ghettos. But summer of 1942, SS started to raid these small places in the countryside. And they deported the Jews to Treblinka. My father's aunt, she was 40 that year. It was she who helped my father. She got stuck in one of these raids, and she was forced on a train and went to Treblinka and was murdered there. And she was very self-sacrificing and courageous in that she helped my father, risking her own life. And also she stayed behind with the elderly mother while the rest of the members of the family fled. My father's grandma was also end up in one of the raids, and they were shot in the back by the SS soldiers on the spot. So this photo shows my father's sister Raquela. And this photo is from 1935. She was 25, and she just finished her study. She was able to escape from one of those raids, and she hid herself in one of the farmers' families. But then the farmers did not dare to keep her, because otherwise the SS were going to shoot them. So my father tried to research the whereabouts of his sister after the war. It seems like that this sister was able to survive for a part of the summer in the forest, but in winter it was really cold, and she had to go to seek help in one of the villages, but she was chased away. And so my father's sister Raquela might have died alone in the forest because of the cold and the famine. So this picture of a stone tablet which my parents set up outside the synagogue in Stockholm, of thousands of names of Jews who were murdered. These are Swedish Jews. So here are the names of my father's murdered family members. Apart from my grandpa, my great aunt, my grandmother, 3 great uncles and their wives, and also my father's cousins, and also a boy of the same age, which was my father's very close friend. So all family members of 15. So of the 15, only 2 were able to survive out of the family. That's my father and my grandma. And then a cousin who was able to come back because he succeeded in fleeing, and he came back. And as he came back, both of his parents and brothers were killed. All those who stayed behind in the ghetto seemed to have been deported to Treblinka. And altogether, it was about 180,000 people who were murdered in Treblinka. But the reason that we knew so little about Treblinka was that there were so few survivors. It was truly a death camp. People were murdered and then burned in the chambers. So on this tablet, you can find the names of my father's good friends before the war. They were murdered together with their families, and there is nothing left of their memories. So my father is the only one who remembered these people. So high up on this tablet, there are a few names of my mother's family members. Up there's my grandma, and also my grandpa's brothers and sisters. So let me now tell you about my mother's side. She was born 1933 in Warsaw. And this photo is from 1966 in front of our house in Stockholm. My mother was 6 years old as Nazi Germany invaded Poland, and 7 when she was forced from her home into the ghetto. In the spring of 1942, she was 8. She was smuggled out of the ghetto, and she was cared by a Christian family during the remaining 3 years of the war. And the family, they took an enormous risk because the Germans would murder everyone who helped the Jews. My mother had contact with this family her entire life. So she sent their names to Yad Vashem, the Israeli Holocaust Museum, to commemorate those who helped the Jews during the Holocaust. And this photo is from the 50s of Poland. That's my mother at the age of 18 and my grandfather. My grandfather, the other grandfather, he escaped from the ghetto the last moment, 1943, just before the Nazis emptied the ghetto of people and burned the ghetto, and they liquidated the entire ghetto. So my grandfather was helped. He was able to live in a hidden apartment, and because he also had a false identity. And he traveled to a big resistance movement in Poland because he had been a reserve officer before the war. And this photo showed him with the medals after the war because he defended Poland against the Nazis, and he was very proud of this medal. And this person, she did not manage to escape. This is my grandma, the other grandma. She was deported to Treblinka, and she was murdered when she was 40, a mother of 2. So all of these painful stories of my parents, this is the hardest. My mother was 8 when she saw her mother for the last time. She lived with this shame the rest of her guilt, the rest of her life. She was taken care of while her own mother was gassed to death and burnt. So as a child, I often wondered why I have so few relatives compared to my Swedish friends. They have cousins and uncles and aunts. But when I became older, I understood that the explanation is the Holocaust, which left a big hole in my family tree. And afterwards, there's a much worse tragedy happening in my life. My mother, which had been a happy person, a very present mother, when she was 62, she suffered deep depression. This went very fast. After a few weeks, she was gone. She committed suicide. And all those who knew her were shocked because she seemed to be a happy person, feeling well. But only afterwards, even though I was a doctor, so this is very common for those who survived the Holocaust to commit suicide later. And I believe that all this anguish or the fear that my mother experienced during the war and the Holocaust, also afterwards, because she lost her own mother under such a terrible circumstance, the combination of all that and the fact that she could not talk about her experience, these are the reason of her untimely death. So I was never able to meet my grandma. She was gassed and burnt, and my daughter has also never met her grandma. And that's why I understand. I think that the Holocaust spreads its tentacles way beyond its historical confines. My father, he had a long life. He died when he was 98, and he was healthy up until 95. And his ability of being able to speak about his experience, expressing his thoughts, helped him. He was the testimony. He was in the midst of all the Nazis. He was also thankful to all those people who ran the risk, enormous risk, and helped him, and also his mother, and also the family that saved my mother. So this photo is from Sweden in the 60s. That's my father at his work. And so it's thanks to my father's stories that I was able to write this book about the Nazi occupation in Poland. And the cut off and the saved. This is a fiction because I like this format, but this is also a report of Poland during the Holocaust. So the key person is this young David, and the book follows the descriptions of the testimony, the witness, first and foremost, my father and then my mother. And the title, The Cut Off, this word came to me when I was young. I thought a lot about my father's sister. She was 23 when the Nazis came to Poland, and 26, who died alone in the forest. Her life was cut short. Those saved are my father and my mother and I. So if they had not belonged to the small minority of Jews who survived, then neither would I. And they would not have survived had they not received help. So the book had dramatic scenes in which the friends helped them and saved them. So those who were saved, they also those who saved life, they saved the whole world. So all those who survived in my family, they did it. They were able to flee from ghetto. The ghetto later became a death trap for those who stayed behind because they were locked up. The survivors, they were able to survive because they received help from courageous people. So of 3 million Jews, only about 5,000 survived. So, and hundreds of thousands of Polish Jews escaped to the Soviet Union. But the Nazi occupation in Poland was long, and it was more than 5.5 years, and 95% of the Jewish population was murdered. And we need to remember what happened during the Holocaust. And we need to counter the hatred and anti-Semitism today. We need to work for life, for health, and for joy. And that's why I would like to finish with these Hebrew words, l'chai, which is to life. Thank you.
Tack så mycket, Elisabeth.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Arvid and Christina. We are going to also listen to their performance a little bit later. So now I have the privilege of introducing tonight's second speaker. That's Simon Holst. He comes from Bethel, the Pentecostal Church in Hervde. He has a podcast together with Roar Sorensen, which is called The People That Survived. So this will also come out as a book form. So Simon, you spoke, and we are so happy that you have been speaking here before, but we are so happy that you're here again. Welcome, Simon. So it's 9 o'clock, 1945. 45,000 refugees were able to flee from their hiding place, where they have been hiding for 3 days. So in the outside area of Auschwitz, where they were able to hide, so risk Tubak. So he drenched himself in gasoline so that the dogs would not smell them, because the soldiers were out there searching for these escapees. So the only slip was that they were out there because they were there as workers during the daytime, and it was for them. They were able to get out of this enormous death camp. Also, they were able to cover the 1,300 kilometers without any food. So after inhuman effort, they were able to cross the frontier 11 days later. And this person, these are the first Jews that were able to flee from the darkest place in history. They did not just flee for their own sake; they sacrificed enormously, and also they were able to warn the Hungarian Jews who were waiting for the trains to be deported. So Hungary was the last country to be occupied, and maybe it was not too late to warn the Hungarian Jews, and they refused to be herded into these trains, crowded trains, and because they understood the truth and what was awaiting them. And also during in the Auschwitz camp, they spent all the time trying to memorize everything in the camp, all the Bastille methods of the SS soldiers and all the deportation trains. So in 10 months, this person, he worked in this Judenrampen, and so the Jews were being separated to the left and to the right, either to be slave workers or to be gassed in the gas chamber directly. So it was about 10% slave workers and 90% gassed to death, and cremated afterwards. So the numbers vary. How many were murdered in this demonic way? It was about roughly 1.1 million or even more in Auschwitz. And people thought that Auschwitz was only a gold mine. So the slave workers were worked to death, and in order to run the Third Reich's war machine. And so enormous richness was being stripped away. One of the commandos task is to open the mouth of the dead Jews to take out the gold teeth before these bodies were cremated. In 1942 and 44, there were about 6 tons worth of gold taken from the guest Jews, and these were being taken to the Bank of the Third Reich. So the Nazis, they also misled the whole world concerning, also including their own people, of what's truly going on in the death camp. They misled also the Jews in Europe, and the Nazis misled the Jews to march themselves to the death camp, and the Jews sent letters to their own relatives, telling them how well they had it, and telling them that they could actually settle in their new place, new home. And then the soldier said to these people, then, okay, leave your bags and take off your clothes, and you're going to this shower room, and you are even going to be given the shower soaps, and their cruelty has no parallel. The signals or the clues were there, but it was just impossible to get into, penetrate this death camp. So Chaim Weizmann said the following. So now we understand what was going on, and we have to speak the truth. So we underestimated the bestiality of the enemies, and also we also underestimated the humanity of our friends. The Nazis hid their evil intentions of liquidating or annihilating the Jewish people. So the intention is also is a very important determining factor of the Hamas today. So the Hamas is out there to annihilate the Israeli state. This has never been a secret, but they are experts in misleading the world, and they baptize themselves as freedom fighters, and they used the false information war, and paint the Jews, Israelis, as invaders and occupiers and oppressors. So this narrative completely ignored the fact that there was a ceasefire, and there was signs of improvement of lives in Gaza and improvement in relationship to Israel. So when Hamas put on their deadliest attack, during which 1,200 Jews were killed in one day, including many, and also many were taken hostages. And these were, even today, these were being held as hostages. They killed indiscriminately, and they burned down, and they caused enormous trauma for the world Jews. And also the dark memories of the Holocaust is now depicted clearly in front of our eyes again. This is part of Hamas' strategy. So amongst the killed Hamas fighters, they found these phrases of Hebrew, and so their killing is intentional. And they also debased women, and it took 2 months before UN Women condemned the sexual abuse and attack committed on that day. So those Jews who allow themselves to be herded to their death, Israel has to stand against the deafening criticism from the world. we are also standing in front of a trial before the International Court of Justice, where Israel is being accused. They do not consider Hamas as a terrorist organization. They call the 7th of October a massacre, so that so what happened? South Africa received an official Hamas delegate, and they only had two arguments. One is that the large number of death toll in Gaza, and also the unacceptable speeches from individual Israelis towards the Palestinians. But this is genocide should be defined as an intentional liquidation of a people group because of their religious or ethnic group, their ethnic identity. So the British philosopher said that. So the intention, she said that the intention is important. Her in conclusion of in the book is that if the purpose is to kill the civilians, or maybe many civilians are being killed as collateral damage. So Israel has never tried to intentionally kill the civilians, but only to secure their nation and also protecting their citizens from these more and more deadly attacks. To cite, so if the Palestinians were to lay down their weapons, then we are going to have peace. But if the Israelis are to lay down their weapons, there will be massacres. This is. So Hamas is one of the cruelest terrorist organizations of today, and this is a tragedy. So Hamas has hidden behind their own civilians. Just like during the Holocaust, people closed their eyes to reality. Instead, we hail the terrorists as freedom fighters again and again, even though Hamas' true intention cannot be misunderstood. So during on the Lebanese TV, it was mentioned that we are going to stage the second and third and more attacks until Israel is annihilated. And they also say that we need to follow up the victory of 7th of October. Gaza is our front line of defense as well as attack. So economic support to Gaza actually is financing jihad. So in a podcast, in the 8th of January, in a postcard, someone said that Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. This is not an abstract dream, but it can be a reality. We, instead of two states, we demand our entire country. So for them, Israel is the front line. And for those who defend religious freedom, speech freedom, and this is their front line. So many chose to close their eyes and ignore the 33-page-long report. So the report was handed over to the generals of the Allied force, as well as to the leaders in the Hungarian Jews and also in Vatican. But they did not react in a timely fashion. But on the contrary, the true intentions of Nazis were only known towards the end. So in the end, the Hungarian king, the king of Hungary, and was petitioned to the stop of to the cessation of deportation, which eventually took place, and many Jews were able to survive thanks to this one single prisoner who escaped, and because he risked his own life in order to stand up for truth and do his uttermost to help his the other prisoners. His example and courage is worth following in a world full of unrighteousness and lies. Thank you so much, Simon. So we shall listen to Ruben Angnason. He is a journalist, a TV producer. He has been with this church and work with our Israel work. He is also going to mention the Israel part of responsible for the Israel report. He met Raoul Wallenberg in Budapest, and before that we shall listen to some beautiful music. So now the title is Jerusalem of Gold. This is a new composition, and afterwards we shall show a video clip, and then Ruben will be up and speak.
I was 12 years old when my mother met Raoul Wallenberg. It was in Ulliot, where Raoul Wallenberg had his first office in Stockholm. The original office was being moved, and I was with his mother, and she was going to talk with Raoul. I thought he was elegant, he was stylish. Well, how did you come to the house which belonged to the legation? My brother was employed as a messenger boy. You must have been very happy when your brother got a job. Yes, of course I was. And I have a list where the names of those people who were employed, and his name is there on the first page. And what did Gustaf do? What kind of job? What did he run for messages? Well, there were different departments. The Swedish legation was in Buda, and certain departments were built up during the persecution. Normal Swedish, for most Swedes, they had a protection passport, and then when the office was moved, it was only for the employees, and after that, that night came, which has been written about in the book, in many, where you were chased away. Yes, that was Sunday in January, in the middle of the night. The Arrow people came to the camp. From the Ukraine, people came. We were sitting in the protection room in the safe house. And then these people, they woke us up, they pull us out of our beds, and they said, those of you who don't do what we say will be shot. They shot some in the stomach. One girl was shot. There was someone who was an invalid. A man was an invalid. He couldn't move, so they shot him on the spot. And then we thought we had to go to Donaukair. I have a picture there. And that was by the keystone, the key for the boats by the Danube, and so they took the dead bodies with them. So we came to this Arrow Cross house, and they said, children with mothers must go out into the garden. So we did, and they well, there was someone who was being to be sent back to the men. My mother said, let's go straight down to the harbour by the Danube, but things went the other way. We went to the ghetto, and those who remained were, day after day, they were down by the harbour, the waterside of the Danube. My brother stayed with us. We never got there. We got to the Arrow Cross house, and there was a room about as big as where we're sitting, and there were people who lived in the house. So there were a lot of us, and they crowded us in. They said, if you don't get any more people in, we're going to have to shoot those of you who can't get in the room. This was the Arrow Cross house, and we thought we were going to march at the middle of the night. But no, it was to a fenced area. It was the ghetto. We didn't know that. And there were high walls around, a great high doorway. And we were pushed in through this gateway. It was very awful. Lots of dead people. They took my boots. An Arrow Cross woman took people out individually. It was my turn. She took even the nuts I had in my pocket. So what about the ghetto? Didn't Raoul Wallenberg save you? Yeah, I thank him so very much, and for several times, because he did what he could to free us. So he was always, he cared especially for the children, and I think it was because of Raoul Wallenberg this rescue operation got going, and we survived, and we came actually to a ghetto, it was fantastic that he dared go to these German officers. It was fantastic that he could do that. He dared, that he had then such charisma. It's unbelievable. A man who comes from another country and he gets right into the cage, the lion's cave. It was fantastic that he could do that. So without Wallenberg, a lot of people more would be dead. Yes. We have Lars Bern there, his book here, and we have the Professor Langley from Swedish Red Cross. This year marks 80 years since the Swedish diplomat Raoul Wallenberg was sent to Budapest to rescue Jews from the Holocaust. Nazi Germany had exterminated the majority of Europe's Jews or caused them to flee and was about to lose the war. In spite of this, Hitler still occupied Hungary, determined to wipe out the largest remaining Jewish population in Europe, Hungary's 800,000 Jews. In the spring of 1944, 440,000 Jews were murdered in the rural areas of Hungary when Adolf Eichmann speeded up the killing machine. Eichmann was the one who wrote the Wannsee Conference Protocol in January 1942, where the Nazi leaders drew up the guidelines for Holocaust of Europe's 11 million Jews. Despite a crying need for logistics for the Nazi war machine in the spring of 1944, the railway from Budapest to Auschwitz was overloaded with cattle trucks packed with Jews. When autumn came, the Swedish legation in Budapest worked tirelessly to rescue Jews from the Holocaust. At the center of what would become the very best moment of the Second World War's official Swedish foreign policy stood a 31-year-old diplomat, Raoul Wallenberg. His arrival in Budapest in July 1944 brought with it exceptional courage, ingenuity, organizational skills. His huge capacity for work ratcheted up the activities of the Swedish legation so that tens of thousands of Jews could finally be saved. Adolf Eichmann was well aware of his Swedish antagonist and expressed his wish to have the Jew dog Wallenberg shot. When the feud between the two was over in early 1945, about 120,000 Jews remained in Budapest. Today, there are a little over 1 million Jews in Europe, about a tenth of the number that existed just before the Second World War. So what was the course of events between the time of when the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, 1938, requested the red J stamps in German passports to stop them at the border of Sweden, to the issuing of protection passes in Budapest a few years later that awarded Jews in the Hungarian capital provisional Swedish citizenship. In July 1938, delegates from 32 countries met in Evian, in France, to discuss the fate of all the Jews persecuted by Nazi Germany. No country offered sanctuary. The Swedish delegation said that Sweden could only accept a small number of refugees and that the Jewish question had to be solved by settling them outside of Europe. 2 weeks before Crystal Night, 1938, the National Board of Health and Welfare wrote in a classified circular that Germans with a J stamp in their passports would be denied entry. In February 1939, 1,500 students protested here in our city, Uppsala, against letting 10 Jewish doctors, I'm reminding you, 10 only, Jewish doctors who fled Nazi persecution. On April the 9th, 1940, Norway was occupied by Nazi Germany. The borders were opened and 60,000 Norwegians would flee to Sweden. For security reasons, the border police handled every single refugee case with the foreign ministry in Sweden via undocumented phone calls. These thousands of conversations would contribute to carving out Sweden's new refugee policy. In the fall of 1942, the Holocaust came to Norway. More than 700 Norwegian Jews were murdered. On November 26, approximately 400 Norwegian Jews were deported to Auschwitz from Oslo. The Foreign Ministry had now discovered that Swedish citizenship meant protection for Jews who were to be deported, which meant that Swedish diplomats held daily negotiations with German authorities in several occupied countries. Out of around 2,100 about 7,000 Jews were rescued and scrambled to Sweden through small boats over the Öresund Sound. About 2,100 Norwegian Jews, upwards of 1,200, fled to Sweden, and their stories made the fate of Norwegian Jews the biggest news item in Sweden in 1942. There were intensive communications between the Foreign Ministry and the Swedish legation in Denmark about Nazi Germany's plans to liquidate Danish Jews. In the official statement on national radio in Sweden and in TT, Sweden's government warned Nazi Germany of the consequences should Danish Jews be deported. For the first time since Hitler came to power, a sovereign European state publicly expressed its willingness to unconditionally accept Jews from a third state fleeing from the Nazis. What then happened to Adolf Eichmann and Raoul Wallenberg after their dramatic confrontation in Budapest? Raoul Wallenberg was arrested by the Soviets in January 1945, abandoned by his country out of deference to Stalin when the Swedish government considered that a billion credit with the Soviets was more important. Abandoned and forgotten here in Sweden, Raoul Wallenberg became an honorary citizen of USA, Canada, Australia and Israel, and is today Sweden's most internationally known diplomat. Adolf Eichmann fled to Argentina, where in May 1960 he was seized by 4 Israeli agents and flown to Israel. The trial of Eichmann in Jerusalem continued throughout 1961 and exposed the evil and horror of the Holocaust to the whole world. When it was over, Israel's first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, stated that Israel must now pay attention to the heroes who risked their lives to save Jews. It was after that that the Holocaust Museum Yad Vashem began to bestow the Righteous Among the Nations award to those who rescued Jews. Among the first to receive this honorific were the Danish resistance movement, the Danish people, and the Danish king. Raoul Wallenberg was number 31 among today's over 28,000 awards. The exhibition Beyond the Call of Duty. This celebrates the 36 diplomats from 21 countries who've been recognized by Yad Vashem as righteous among the nations. 6 of the 36 diplomats on the list are Swedes, and the most famous being Raoul Wallenberg. No other country in the world to date has as many diplomats as Sweden among those that Yad Vashem counts as righteous among the nations. Sweden did far too little and far too late in the fight against the Holocaust, and how many people died because of our closed borders at the beginning of the war is impossible to say. But at the end of the war, there were over 200,000 refugees in Sweden. In the compact darkness of the Holocaust, the heroic deeds performed by Raoul Wallenberg and other diplomats in Budapest with the support of the Swedish Foreign Ministry are a bright and shining light. To neither acknowledge nor highlight these good examples is tantamount to allying with darkness and playing into the hands of evil. For this reason, it is time for Sweden to give Raoul Wallenberg and the Swedish Foreign Ministry's bureaucratic resistance to the Holocaust its rightful place in Swedish historiography and the Swedish remembrance of the Holocaust. Finally, the degree of anti-Semitism is something that defines the spiritual and moral state of a nation. The world's best-known Jew, Jesus, described it in this way in his story about how the Son of Man will one day judge the nations of the world. What you did to these my brothers, that is, you, these least of my brothers, that is, those most vulnerable, you did to me. Thank you very much, Ruben. We're now going to take up a collection which will partly be given to the Israel Work and Israel Department at here at church. There's a pod monthly and a report monthly, and also arranging organization, organize trips to Israel. We're going to continue this work and organize this kind of evenings like this. But also we want to give a gift to the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, and specifically to the Haifa home, which now we'll see a little more of on these screens.
all started in 2010. Shimon Shabak, who directs today this house, he had a small soup kitchen here in this neighborhood. And he saw that Holocaust survivors were coming to his soup kitchen, and he felt if there are needy Holocaust survivors, we need to do something about it. And he asked us to come, and he showed us a small apartment where he wanted to host 13 Holocaust survivors. He said, can the Christian Embassy help us to purchase that building? I looked at the entire building, which was a 4-story building, and I felt the Lord talk to me, and I said, Shimon, why don't we buy the entire house? I was driving away from Haifa and thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? And how do we ever get this money together? I was pleading with the Lord, please help us. We have 5 months time to get the money together. For me, the biggest miracle was to see that in 2 weeks, people were sending us so much money like never before that after 2 weeks we could purchase that building. And within those 5 months which we had, we could even purchase 2 buildings.
אני רואה גם שיש פה יד אלוהים במקום הזה. וללא המרקם בין השגרירות הנוצרית ליד עזר לחבר, המקום הזה לא יכל להתפתח. אז אני רואה בזה, במדרגה ראשונה את הדבר הטוב ביותר שקורה, ולא סתם באים לפה בני נוער, חיילים, שהם שומעים שנוצרים, הם מחזיקים את המקום, הם מתנדבים במקום, זה מראה שאפשר גם את ההיסטוריה לשנות בצורה טובה, והשגרירות הנוצרית היא דוגמה לכל הנוצרים בעולם, איך אפשר לעשות דברים אחרת, ואתם עושים את זה גם ככה.
What I could see is that this house is providing an inner healing to those people to deal with their past in a positive way. You know, as a German, to see this home, and it's very humbling in many ways. You come from a country which wrote the darkest chapter of Jewish history, and today to be here and to see that you are able to open a new page in the life of the Jewish people, it's very touching. People from all over the country, they are applying, we want to be at the home for Holocaust survivors. And the very sad story for me is that many of them we have to tell, no, we don't have the finances to add more people to it. So it's really my vision that by the end of this year, even we have 100 people here, or that we can expand this house here in this next few years, even for a couple of 100 survivors.
So we're now about to take up this collection. Tragically, anti-Semitism has not ceased to exist at the end of the Holocaust. We see that it is increasing and marching forward, moving forward. Now we are in a concrete way can show our support and spread good and relevant information about the Holocaust and about Israel's situation and helping this home. You might like to give via Swish. There is the number. It's 900 1660. And please just give a little message, write the message Israel, and then the money will be dedicated to that, as you have said. If you have cash and would you rather give that way, we have buckets as you exit this hall in the hands of our stewards. So please, please be free to give there too. Thank you for your support. We're now going to listen to Israel's national song, Hatikva, the hymn of hope. And the words say this: as long as there is a soul of a Jew longing, the hope is still with us. Karin Nietomt and Nomi Tulin will be accompanied by Shelley Sandberg on the piano. So shall we stand together? And you'll see the text of Hatikva on the screens and join in the singing if you wish.
Varsågod och sitt ner.
Please be seated. We are about to close, and we'd extend a thank to each one of you who's come and those who've followed us online. Thank you especially to all of those who've participated, Elizabeth Volpert, Simon Holst, Ruben Agnesson, and our musicians. On Saturday, something important, a manifestation against anti-Semitism in Norrmalmstorg in Stockholm. 2 buses will be leaving this church. If you would like to book up one of the few remaining places, make your way to the counter at the back. Elizabeth will be signing her book, which she has spoken from, and it's a specially cheap price tonight. It's written especially for young people, so buy it to take home with you. There's an art exhibit outside from this pod that Simon and Rua have been doing regarding the people who survived. And you can even buy that too. Several organizations have their information booths and tables outside there. Please talk with them. Also, welcome out to the cafeteria afterwards, so please make your way past the bookshop while you're there. And there are those who have been invited. You have a special. If you have received a special invitation, please make your way to the room behind the partition walls.